Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is State Farm agent Rosa Fields. She's been serving Central Louisianians with home, auto, life, and all of your personal products that you could imagine for almost 3 decades. And she joins us this morning to talk about hurricane season starting June 1st, what we all need to know and how we need to prepare. Rosa, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning, Carlette. Thank you for having me.
Boy, it's a scary, scary thought because so many people are still trying to recover from the last hurricanes. And here we are, hurricane season is upon us again. What are the most important things we need to know and understand about preparation?
Well, as we know, 2020 was a horrible year in more ways than one as related to the pandemic. And then also here comes Hurricane Laura on August the 27th of 2020, and then followed swiftly by Hurricane Delta on October the 10th of 2020. What we should know starting out is that hurricane season runs from June the 1st to November the 30th. So that is a full 5 months, almost 6 month period that we have to be on our guard and be prepared. So you're going to hear, I'm sure, a lot of those kinds of comments because as I'm reading, it says that 2021 is expected to be, once again, an above average hurricane season with anywhere from 16 to 20 named storms predicted.
16 to 20 named
16
storms?
Named storms. You know, the thing is that we have a tropical storm. And then if it forms to a hurricane based on the winds and all, then it's a named storm. And that is where we come in as the insurance because, and a lot of people were caught off guard last year by the hurricane deductible, which had been in effect actually since 2013. But because literally, there had been no named hurricane to reach this far north, meaning central Louisiana and even into North Louisiana, the hurricane deductible never really applied. Well, almost everyone was caught off guard by what was a 5% hurricane deductible. When we speak of percentages, we're talking about the percentage of the amount that your house is insured for. So for simple math purposes, if your home is insured for $100,000, you have a 5% deductible. That is $5,000. That is your first dollar claim amount. Now, we offered the ability to roll back that deductible from 5% to 2%, unfortunately, after the storm. But this is another reason why people need to be in touch constantly with your insurance agent. Don't just make it, a once every 5-year conversation, because you do have the ability to roll that deductible back, which then, if we simple math, $100,000 home, 2% deductible. Now we're only talking about $2,000 first dollar out of pocket amount.
Okay. Is it too late? Can people get with you now if they didn't roll that back? Because you have to request that, don't you?
You do have to request it, but we made it a point here in my office to contact all of our customers. So if you're a Rosa Fields customer and we've not contacted you, please call the office. But we have the ability to roll that deductible back only at renewal. So if your renewal has not come about yet, that's probably the reason that you haven't been contacted. But it's still a good idea to call and find out when your renewal is and when we might be able to roll that deductible back. It's a very small premium charge to do that, but it's a difference of 3% when it comes to the out-of-pocket expense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now a lot of people are still trying to dig out from all of the storms, and I want you to talk about the difference between the severe weather events that we have seen and continue to see that aren't named, that do tons of damage, versus a hurricane or even a tornado.
Right. Okay. So when we think about severe weather, in the weather forecaster might speak about a tornado that's in the area. Okay. We all know that there's a difference between a tornado and a hurricane. A tornado is going to occur very unexpectedly. and the difference between the hurricane being all forecasted, everybody's watching it in the Gulf and seeing how fast it's traveling and so forth. So a tornado is going to touch down. It's going to happen unexpectedly. And that's the difference between your hurricane deductible that I just spoke about and your regular all peril deductible. Your all peril deductible will apply when the tornado strikes. Okay. So, and most people's regular all peril deductible is 1% of the amount that their house is insured for. So back to that $100,000 example, now we're talking about $1,000 deductible. But keep in mind, it's 1% of the amount that your house is insured for. So if your house is insured for $172,000, that's $1,720 first dollar amount deductible.
Okay. And so we need to understand our deductibles, but we also need to know, okay, if a tree falls in the house or if, there's damage or other people's trees, because I think, I know a lot of people who other people's trees fell in their yard during just like some of the severe weather events. And then you're left grappling with, okay, whose responsibility is it? Because it's not my tree, but it's in my yard.
Right. Yes. Well, let us just keep this in mind. For the most part, everybody has to take care of themselves. In other words, even though it's your neighbor's tree, if it falls into your yard, and if it falls onto your fence or your home, your neighbor is not responsible for that unless a few conditions apply. For example, one of the conditions that might apply is that if the tree has been dead for years and you and your neighbor have had whether a heated conversation or a conversation and you have pointed out to them, neighbor, that tree is dead and it is threatening to fall on my property, then it really becomes a liability issue because now the homeowner is not doing the proper maintenance type things that need to be done. Even so, in many cases, that's hard to mitigate with your neighbor. So if people will just think about, and I know how hard it is, but you almost have to think about, I have to be able to take care of myself because I may not have an agreeable neighbor. They're not going to give me their insurance information. So it's very difficult. So in many of the circumstances, it's all really about you taking care of yourself, which then means, if you have a neighbor's tree that is protruding over onto your property, I believe I'm correct in speaking, you have the right to trim that tree and get it off of any threat that it's becoming to your property.
But so if indeed that tree falls onto your property in whatever event, you're going to be responsible for it.
That's correct. That is correct. So like I said, with very few exceptions, but let's just say, because most of the time when it happens, it's the storm, right? So your neighbor is not responsible for the storm.
Right.
Okay. That's when you hear people talk about act of God. Okay. So it was the act of the weather that caused the tree to fall onto your neighbor is not responsible for that. So then now it becomes, you have to take action to protect and prevent your own property from further damage.
Okay, good. All right, let's take a break here, Rosa. But when we come back, I want to talk about what people need to understand about their policies, what they may need to add as we are headed toward hurricane season. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is no stranger to Central Louisiana. She is State Farm agent Rosa Fields. She's been serving Louisianians for really 3 decades. And this morning, we're talking about what we need to know when the storms come, because they are coming. And one of the things that we were talking about during the break, Rosa, is what we need to know right now, because as you said, so many people were caught off guard with the high deductible. A lot of people didn't have $5,000 to come out of pocket, at that time. So how do you help people to plan for what could be the inevitable?
Right. Well, it's very painful, and it's very painful for me to watch my customers in Central Louisiana go through these things. So, what I'm recommending, and that is why these conversations, your and my conversation,
Mm-hmm.
are so important. We have now less than a month before the
Mm-hmm.
season starts. You're going to begin to hear more. You're going to see more commercials on TV. Get prepared. So let's not wait until the weather person says the storm is in the Gulf. Think about, and I'm just going to step outside the insurance thing just for a second. Get your water, get those things that you are going to need. If you don't have a generator and you can afford one, go ahead and begin to get that.
So, Rosa, you're saying get the things that we need now, like water. Don't wait until
That's
everybody's trying to
right.
get water.
That's right. That's right. And all of those things that apply to the storm. Don't wait. Let's go ahead and Google, get the list, and begin to go ahead and get those things.
Okay.
So, as it relates to insurance, what I want to say is that I want people to become intimate with their policy and with their agent, so much to the point to where you know exactly what to do whenever the storm hits. And if you have to write this down and make it a part of your storm plan, then that's fine. To the point, like I said, of knowing what your deductible is. If a tree, let's give the example. So when the wind comes and the tree falls on what we call covered A property, which is just your dwelling or a shed or a fence, that's what kicks in the coverage, essentially. If a tree just falls in your yard and it doesn't hit anything, that is a maintenance issue. And that means you just grab a chainsaw, get some help, and cut it up.
Okay.
But when we jump into action is when the tree falls on something, okay, like your house,
Mm-hmm.
like your carport, like your shed. All right. And so then now it is such that the adjusters, things have changed a bit, especially with COVID, the way that it was. The adjusters were not being summoned out to the properties like previous years. And I suspect that that's going to be kind of a trend. So what we've done as a company, we have now what we call virtual adjusting. And either I will come and take photographs, we ask the customer to use their phones, and we can upload those photos to the claim very easily, very convenient. But if you have a tree on your property, you have to do something. Okay, so it's not always just about, okay, what can I do as the insurance agent? As a homeowner, what do you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
So you can call a tree person, but knowing that you have a deductible. And so a lot of the deductible is going to apply first. But what do we do? You have to get the tree off your property.
Right.
So if you're not going to do it yourself and you have to call a professional, you need to know that, remember what your first dollar out of pocket amount is. So that's where you start. You have to get the tree off the property in order for us to assess it to see what the damage is underneath.
Whew. It's a lot. Okay, so I want to talk about how you know, and this goes back to the intimacy that we all need to have with our policies. What our
Yes.
policy covers, but most importantly, what it doesn't cover.
Okay, so I spoke to that a little bit a minute ago. Anything that is of a maintenance nature,
Okay.
even before the storm, we all have to learn to even take a walk around our properties. It used to be like a spring cleaning kind of thing, but we need to walk around our properties, take a look at any overhanging limbs and all of those things. In other words, don't wait for it to happen. Because, for instance, even if a large limb falls on your home, because you have a deductible, there's a chance that once the deductible is subtracted, there may not be a lot or if any payment on the part of your insurance policy. So you still have to get that taken care of. So preventive maintenance is a big, big thing.
Mm-hmm. So I want you to speak to people who are renters, but they're renting a house. And there always seems to be confusion about, okay, this damage happened or I lost, my property. but it is not your home, you are renting. What is the responsibility for the person who is living in the house, renting?
Right. Okay. So think of it as just what it is. Your landlord owns the house itself, and that ownership pretty much stops at the walls, at the interior wall. And then you have, as a tenant, all of the things, your personal property, your couch, your beds, all of that is on the inside, the shell of inside the shell of the home. So you're not per se responsible for anything. You know, if the tree falls on the house, the first thing you're going to do is call your landlord, if however that works. But if the tree falls and it comes inside the house, and now the rain is coming down and your sofa and all of those things are damaged, that's where your renter's policy, which takes care of your, what we call your personal property or your contents, that's where that comes in.
Okay, so it is important that if you are living in someone else's house, that you have to be responsible for insuring the contents, your property.
That's correct. Because think about it. If you call your landlord and you say, well, the tree fell in the roof and it damaged my sofa, what do you think he's going to be more concerned about, the roof or your sofa?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. We have to begin to take on responsibility for a lot of things. And it starts with the knowledge, which is why we're having this conversation. And renters insurance is, for the most part, fairly inexpensive, to the tune, generally, depends on how much coverage you want. But I mean, it could be as little as $12 per month.
Wow.
Depending, again, I mean, if you have a full house full of furniture, then you're going to have more coverage. So the premium is consumer with that. So, then, that's separate from the liability that could happen. But all of that's covered in a renter's policy, just like the landlord has his policy.
We have these conversations as often as we can. And I know it's got to be very challenging for you when these storms happen and people come to you and they're unprepared and they didn't really know what they had and what they have. So I want us to take a break here, but I want to talk about how people need to be able to look at their policy. Sometimes we can be oblivious of what our policy even says. We hadn't looked at it in so long. And I also want to talk about the issue of water coming in from out of the sky and water coming up, and how we need to be covered in those circumstances. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is State Farm agent Rosa Fields, and we're really just trying to have this conversation so that we'll all be prepared. And we know if we don't prepare, then at the end of the day, we're going to have challenges. And during the break, I was saying to you, Rosa, that there are still people that don't have their homes repaired after the last storms, which is really going to create problems, not only for the next storm, but for their property value. So how do you help people to get better prepared when they're just not prepared at all financially?
Right.
You're
correct. Right. I mean, I see many tarps, and that is definitely a sign of people in one way or the other that are unable to get their properties repaired. Home ownership has a lot of benefits that people may not be aware of. And one of those is the fact that if you've been in your home for a long time and you've paid your notes on time and for the length of time that you've been there, there's a very good chance that you have equity in your home. Now, I understand and I can appreciate how people want to get their homes paid off, or they don't want to increase any loan limits or anything that they have. But in a lot of cases, this is your largest investment, and it is by using that investment is how you can get to repair your property, put your property back together, and possibly even increase the value of your property. So, what I suggest for everyone is that they have a local banker, someone that you can sit down with, just like your insurance agent, and be able to go in and say, this is what I'm thinking about, and how can I work this? Credit unions, banks, everybody there are still local bankers. So you can go in and have the conversation, whatever your house will appraise for, less the amount that you owe on it, is the equity that you have in your home. And while the bank is not going to loan you 100% of that amount, you are able to get generally about 80% of that amount. And in many cases, you can use that to either put a new roof on your home. And this is aside from insurance. You can put a new roof on your home. You may need to update your kitchen, do some painting, new flooring, and things like that. And all of that can be done in a way to where you may not even have very much or just a small amount of an increase in your loan payment. So those are the things that you have to consider, because you may not have $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 to put a new roof on and to update your kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that people are afraid, Rosa, about a line of credit, especially if they've never had one, and understanding what that means and what that will mean to them?
It could, but, and the first thing that I would say, I spent 18 years in the banking business. And so there is a point that we all have to come to where we are more disciplined about our finances. So a line of credit is much like a credit card. And yes, you can run it up to its limit. And if you haven't done what you needed to do, then you could be in a spot. So, of course, discipline in those type situations, discipline in everything, really. But it can be done. So like I said, and if you've been disciplined enough to purchase a home, stay in that home, say for 10 years, and you've paid your notes on time, you're already showing a lot of discipline.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so you can use what you have to get what you want.
Good. And you can do that through your credit union as well. And
credit union, banks,
mm-hmm.
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people that have always had an issue with flooding, and as sure as the storm or the severe weather is going to come, they are going to flood. What do you say to those people?
Okay, so we're talking about two different events. Just like we've been having a lot of severe weather threats with anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of rain in a very short amount of time. And what we're finding is that there are more and more properties that are flooding than ever before. You may not even be in a flood zone, and you may have gotten water in your house. A lot of that has to do with how high your home is built from, off the ground, meaning even if it's on a slab, when you drive into your home, do you drive level straight in? Do you drive up a little incline, or is your home actually below the street? A lot of that will tell you about whether or not, and what the chances are that your house is going to flood. Now, just because we get 2 to 6 inches of rain in a 10-hour period does not mean that everyone else is flooded and that it's a flood or a FEMA flood event. So, in a lot of cases, even if you have flood insurance, in that regard, if your house gets wet, you may not have any coverage for that. Now,
so if I don't have flood insurance and there is a flood event and water gets in my house, what's going to happen?
If you don't have, let's just say if you do have flood insurance,
okay,
and water gets in your house, but there's not been a flooding event in your area, you may not have coverage. Now, I know that's surprising. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And we've encountered that. So, once again, that this is where sandbags, anything and everything you can do to keep the water out of your house is necessary. You may even need to, and this is probably for everyone, everybody needs a good, wet, dry vacuum. You need a good one, not a 3-gallon one. You probably need the biggest one that you can find, and just put it in storage somewhere, because if something happens, that is one of the quickest and best ways to help get the water out of your home. This is also the reason that a lot of people have taken up carpet. They only want the hard floor, meaning ceramic tile or even the vinyl. If you're on a slab, of course, vinyl flooring, those things where the water can be gotten up quickly and it's not going to cause, any after issues. But again, a lot of it, think about if you're expecting a lot of rain, a heavy, heavy rainfall, that's just rain. And again, I can't speak enough about choosing the home that you buy, where it's located, and thinking about whether or not it has flooded before, and how is that going to affect you in the long term.
Okay, so let's talk about that water coming out of the sky, and maybe you had shingles off of your house or some sort of way that the water gets in from the rain. Is the insurance going to cover it in that event?
Yes. And again, a lot of this is if this happens and
Oh, I
if this
know.
happens and so forth. And I know that drives people crazy, but that is also the reason why it's important that you be able to just call your agent and say, this is what I have going on. Keeping in mind that if it's a rainstorm and the water comes in and you get water in one room, if your deductible is $1,000, the chances that we're going to write an estimate for more than that is slim. Okay. But if you have a good roof on your home, the rain has to be so heavy and so fast and the wind blowing so hard that that's when the water comes in. If your roof is more than 15 years old, there is a very good chance, because of its age and the wear and tear that it has, a good hard rain may get you water on your ceiling. But do you see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
The maintenance between having a good roof and a roof that's coming close to the end of its life.
Wow. These are so many logistics
It
that
is.
it's hard to even understand, even if you're
I know.
trying to understand your coverage. What, again, I go back to the question, what's covered, what's not covered, and how
Okay.
it all works. And
Right.
so
Let me give you an example.
okay, go ahead.
Let me give you another example. We had a horrible ice storm on
Oh, yeah.
Valentine's Day. Okay. So water, it was cold, it snowed, and then it rained. And the thing that I don't think has ever happened before, we had ice and snow on the ground for a period of 5 to 7 days. Probably has never happened before. What happened in a lot of cases, we had a lot of claims where on the roof, the ice accumulated and formed what we call an ice dam. And then when it rained, you had a block of ice sitting in a crevice in your roof. And because the water could not flow off of the roof and into the gutter or off onto the ground, the water came into the house and caused damage to the ceiling. That's covered. Okay. We pay for the damage to the ceiling. Now get this, ice does not cause damage to a roof.
Really?
Ice does not cause damage to the shingles. But if the water sat there long enough to where it's saturated and it came down hard enough to where it caused damage to your ceiling, we had spots on the ceiling, etc. But that doesn't mean that you need a new roof, because the ice did not damage the roof. It
Wow.
just sat there on it. Okay. The felt, think about, okay, so you have your ceiling, you may have insulation, you may have, then you have your attic, right? And your attic is open, but then you have a 4x8 plyboard, then you have your felt, and then you have your roof shingles. Okay. And so if everything is worn and it's just old and aged, it's easier for the water to penetrate. If the shingle can't do its job by shielding the felt from the water, then if it's rained hard and long enough, then it's going to penetrate those two levels, and then it's going to drip down and cause the damage to your ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
From a rainstorm, if you get water on your ceiling, yes, that's covered, because that's That's damage, it's accidental direct physical loss to your ceiling.
Sure. Let's get a break here,
But if your
Rosa.
roof,
Let's get a
okay,
quick break here, and we'll come back and we'll finish this conversation, because I think
okay,
we're all like sitting in the classroom of
I know,
insurance trying to figure out what we
I
have
know.
and what we need and how we can protect ourselves, our homes,
Okay,
and our families. State
okay.
Farm agent Rosa Fields is our guest this morning. Stay on point. We're back with more of this conversation right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is State Farm agent Rosa Fields, and she's trying to break it down in the simplest form so that we can all understand what we have and what we need. And I think you said something so interesting in the break, Rosa. I said, people are saying, well, I pay all this money for insurance, and when I have an issue, the insurance may not pay for it. And you said, what about that?
What I want people to know is that things have evolved to the point to where no longer is really your insurance policy for the small. And like you said, that is relative. And I understand that. But keep in mind, it is no longer for the small, what I'm just going to say, small losses.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be for those larger losses that no one would expect anyone to handle out of pocket. And so what does that mean? I believe that it means that either we learn to try to set something aside for
Mm-hmm.
those emergency type situations. I've spoken about the line of credit and having the equity in your home. There has been like a shifting, so to speak, of where we are kind of being held more responsible as consumers to play some part in taking care of ourselves.
Right.
That yes, we are here. I am here. I want to be here for my customers. But we live in Louisiana. And what that means, even though we're not below I-10, we are a part of a state that borders the Gulf of Mexico. And we have issues in our state with weather that a lot of other states above us say may not, do not have.
Mm-hmm.
So we accept about where we live, and we have to begin to think about how can I begin to help, and what can I do to help myself on these type situations.
And this is a conversation that nobody really wants to have, because we think, or we've been conditioned to believe, that the insurance is going to handle it. So when we talk about claims being large or small, I said that's relative. It's what's large to you. But as an agent, what would constitute a large claim? When do we need to call an agent so that we can expect that this thing will be covered? Is it 5,000?
Okay.
Is it 10,000? What's the amount?
Okay. So first, you can call me, your agent, at anytime you have a loss. And then what I'm going to guide you about, okay, let us talk about what is the value of your claim. If your deductible is let's just say one of the two deductibles that you have, your all peril deductible, that 1% that we spoke about, and using 100,000, for example. So if your deductible is $1,000 and you only have a water stain on your ceiling, and the cost to repaint a whole room or to buy some Kills spray, is at a minimum $250, you don't really have a claim. Now, what we want to be, and what we'll talk about is, okay, what is the condition of the roof and why did the water come in the first place? We'll have that. If you have, if we've had a big hailstorm, you may have damage to your roof, which then now we need to have a conversation about starting a claim and having your roof assessed for, hail damage, whatever damage it might be. But we talk about what is the value of your claim, what is versus your deductible. If we're only gonna pay you $85 after your $1,000 is deducted, you shouldn't be filing a claim. If a tree falls through your home and you can see the sky through your ceiling, there's no question, about whether or not we should be filing a claim to help you. So what I encourage people to do is to think about, call us right off the bat, no problem, but be prepared to have a conversation about what is the value of your claim and what can you do to mitigate and decide whether or not you really need to file a claim. And please don't be upset because we're having that conversation, because I'm just trying to guide you through that process.
Right.
And don't say, well, you're just trying to discourage me from filing a claim. No, not that at all. We have to begin to have those conversations.
Are there
About preparing.
penalties? Does the insurance company penalize you if you do file those little claims like that?
There are ways in which your premium can be affected by filing claims. There's a difference between frequency and amount paid. You know, if you file 3 claims like in a 3-year period, we're going to have a conversation about that. And so much of it depends on how long has your policy been with that particular company. We give a lot of credence to that, but it's all worth a conversation. And claims filed, by law, we're not allowed to charge anyone for filing a claim if it's due to weather related issues. But if we get back into the frequency, then that is a conversation that we have to have.
Absolutely. And this conversation is ongoing, and every single person should be calling you, Rosa, to have the conversation before we jump into June, because June is right around the corner, and making sure that people have exactly what they need. Rosa, before we've got to let you go, tell people how they can connect with you and just set up an appointment time to come in and assess what they have and what they may need.
What I will tell you, what I feel in my heart, this is the value of having a local agent, a person that you can go in and sit down with and have the conversation face to face, layperson to layperson about what you have and, more importantly, what you don't have. So, of course, I've been in business since 1992. My office number is the same, 487-1881. I'm located here on South MacArthur Drive, 4304 South MacArthur Drive. Call me if you are my customer and we've not spoken in a while. Call my office, speak with either Bridget or Glasell or myself. We can go over all of that with you. If you're not one of my customers, I would love to have you as a customer so that you can take advantage of this type of service. If you're, if you're already insured, get in touch with your agent, set up the conversation, and just learn just to ask a lot of questions. There's no bad or dumb question.
Absolutely. And I think we all need to be prepared for the unexpected as well as the expected. And we are expecting a very, very active hurricane season. Rosa, thank you so much for taking the time to take us to school and help us to understand what we should have, maybe what we don't have, and what we need to get. The number again, 318-487-1881. Like a good neighbor, State Farm agent Rosa Fields is making life go right. Stay on point. We're back right after this.